From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. If you are tuning in to our listener mail program, the evening it publishes, allow us to welcome you to August 21st, 2025. And what better way to ring in the 21st than to dig up some rutabagas?
Excuse me, ma'am, Art Farkle, Channel 10 News. Can I get a word? Is it true that you dug up all the rutabagas? No!
Poetry. What are we going to do without all the rutabagas? We don't have any for us to dig up. This is terrible news. Yeah.
The rutabagas will come again.
It's a rutabaga apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm rooting for this Bart Farkle character.
Me too. I hope he makes I hope he's a regular cast member, or at least a recurring.
Truth in journalism, right? A regular Clarence Darrow is that guy. We're going to talk about several things that we've heard from the best part of the show, our fellow conspiracy realists. We'll get to what we're calling the breadcrumb theory about nobody's pal, Jeffrey. We're going to hear some firsthand experience from Washington, D.C. And before we do any of that, we're going to tune in to a message from Mr. Delay. Caveat asterisk. Caveat asterisk after a word from our sponsors.
And we have returned with the aforementioned message from Mr. Delay. Because, delay. Sorry, audio nerd joke. Here we go. Hi, boys. Mr. Delay here again. As always, feel free to read or paraphrase my message on the air. Mr. Delay, we would never presume to paraphrase your words. Only verbatim for Mr. Delay. I just listened to your classic episode on bug-out bags and thought I'd have some advice and insight to share from my time serving as a combat medic in the U.S. Army. Apologies for the length of my message. No apologies needed, Mr. Delay. It helps us fill the time and with fantastic information from you. Anyone wanting the latest and greatest trauma medicine guidelines that the military has to offer should look up the most updated TCCC, graciously pronounced TC3, or Tactical Combat Casualty Guidelines. But I'll go over the basics here, only including things I think an average Joe could accomplish with a bit of practice and luck. Traumatic, emergency, and battlefield wounds should be addressed in order of march. Boy, do we love an acronym here. And stuff they don't want you to know. That stands for massive hemorrhaging, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia, which could also be like a really cool like black metal song title. Massive hemorrhaging. The first step is to staunch the bleeding, usually with a tourniquet applied 2 to 3 inches above the wound. Always remember to write down the time the tourniquet is applied. Interesting. If bleeding persists, apply a second tourniquet right by the first one. Did you guys know about that? About writing down the time? That is fascinating. And the idea of a second tourniquet. I think we chat about these one by one maybe a little bit. Tourniquets freak me out, by the way, y'all. I have to not give blood, but have blood drawn relatively frequently. And my least favorite part of it is the tourniquet, because the pressure of it and just kind of feeling my precious bodily fluids being drained from me with that pressure. It really freaks me out. But I was actually recently told that I have good veins and that if I'd only said something, she wouldn't have needed to use the tourniquet. So, I learned something there. But this is a different kind of use of a tourniquet in order to help staunch the bleeding. Yeah, what did you know about the idea of a second tourniquet, Ben, and also making note of the time? I imagine it's just a way of gauging the whether it's working or not.
Yeah, the timing. I'm laughing out of a lack of comfort here. So the timing is key, as you said here, Mr. Delay, because when help arrives, and hopefully help does come, you need to be able to have a record of what happened, right? Of how long the person or the patient or the victim has been in this situation. This TCCC is invaluable, which is one of the reasons we so greatly appreciate your email, Mr. Delay. And we also, Noel, I think we need to note that as Mr. Delay says, says, these are just the basics. Please do read more regarding this, hopefully before you need to know it.
That's right.
And then, as you said, we'll continue point by point.
Yeah. And I just want to say, too, I mean, Mr. Delay really did do a great job of curating some super useful tips. And I mean, I'm no field medic, to be sure, and I really have very little medical knowledge, period. So this is all really good information for me. But I think I always assumed the tourniquet was applied to the wound, which is clearly very, very wrong. So good on you, Mr. Delay, for schooling me there. Let's go to the second point here, airway, the A in March. Next step is to secure the airway. And I think if anyone's watched any medical dramas, that's always a big point when the first responders show up, is clearing the airway, making sure that it is unobstructed. If the patient is unconscious and has vomit or blood in their mouth, turn them to let it pour out. Note, if the patient suffered a fall or you suspect any neck or spinal trauma, ensure that the head is held forward, which would be using one of those, brace kind of things I think that you see EMTs putting individuals into to keep the neck straight so it doesn't exacerbate any kind of neck or spinal injury. This is in line with the rest of the body, and then turn the whole body as a unit with some help from a partner. Hopefully you have.
That's one of those things that you see in films and TV shows all the time, where when somebody suffers some kind of fall or some kind of injury, like they get hit by a car or something, you'll usually hear one character say, "No, don't move them." Right? That's the concept of you're going to cause more harm by simply moving them, especially with the head and body connection there at the neck.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So moving on to the R in March, which is respiration. Any penetrating chest wounds should have a chest seal applied, essentially a thin barrier to act as skin to keep air out of the chest. In a pinch, a square piece of plastic, a chip bag, anything intact that will move with the chest as it expands and contracts. Secured on all sides with tape. A chip bag. Okay. If the patient is struggling to breathe, it is likely air has gotten into their chest and is pressing on their lungs. And this is one of the most squig me out things that I see in these types of depictions in film and TV. Tear one side of the chest seal to burp it and then reseal it. And the next one is the thing I'm talking about. If that doesn't work, we need a needle decompression. And oftentimes you will see an improvised one of those. And this is me not paraphrasing, but just adding, like a ballpoint pen that you remove the pen part of and crack open one side and then pierce through the sternum. And then that allows, the air to escape. A needle decompression may be needed, he says. But any brave or desperate souls in the audience can check out the TCCC guidelines for more instructions. But I think that's what we're talking about, y'all. Is that very, very gnarly emergency act of, using an improvised device around to penetrate the chest and then release any air bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's portrayed not often accurately in film and fiction. It's an ugly thing that we see happen, but it can save lives. And this, Mr. Delay, fellow listeners, Matt, this leads us to the next C on the list, which is circulation.
Circulation, indeed, the C in March. And that goes like this. If the patient is not in shock, the wound is not an amputation, and the wound can be closely monitored. The wound should be filled with homeostatic gauze and wrapped in a dressing. Try to find the exact spot that the wound is coming from and press the gauze into it hard. And I imagine when he says coming from, that would be like the bleeding and the sort of deepest part of the wound. And press gauze into it hard. If your fingers aren't hurting, you're not pressing hard enough. Ooh, that's got to smart for the person being pressed. This should be done less than 2 hours after the aforementioned tourniquet is applied, at which point the tourniquet can be released. Don't do this if more than 6 hours have passed, and try to get it done in less than 2.
Again, to the point about noting the time the tourniquet is applied when, later medical care occurs. This stuff might be disturbing to a lot of us, but again, as Mr. DeLay surely knows, it is way better to know about this stuff now while you're listening from the safety of your home or your car or your helicopter, or where else are people when they're listening to the show, you guys?
Hovercraft,
dirigible.
Dirigible, perhaps a Segway or some other personal ambulatory device. Wherever you're at. This is super helpful stuff. Finally, we have the H in March, which is hypothermia. Just a biggie in certain climates. Blood is one of the primary ways the body maintains temperature. Minimize patients' exposure to cold, replacing wet clothing, and wrap in a blanket. I mean, we know how quickly wet clothing, given a frigid environment, can lower the body's temperature, which is absolutely a no-no if you are suffering from some kind of physical trauma. Replace the wet clothing or even remove it and wrap in a blanket if able to do so.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like essential stuff, guys, and I don't know how or why any of us would actually get hit with all of this information unless we were doing some kind of military training, anything from the reserve to, someone who's going into active duty somewhere. How this is just an available resource, right? You could find this thing.
I just found it. It's a free PDF. You can literally just search for military TCCC and on army.mil. It is the Tactical Combat Casualty Care Handbook version 5. It would appear that the most recent version came out in 2023. So I don't think they're updated like yearly necessarily, but it is definitely a full manual that you get with illustrations and all kinds of helpful tips. Dig a little deeper if you want to go beyond the kind of curated, everyday Joe pointers that Mr. DeLay brought to us today.
And you very much should, especially if you live in the United States. You have already paid for this book, because it was sure made with your tax dollars. So it's already a book you paid for. It's already some guidance and insight that you have paid for. Please do avail yourself of this information. We could also do almost a book club on the essential field and survival manuals. There are a ton of them out there, not all as reliable as the others. But it goes back to, again, this is something you'll agree with, Mr. DeLay, the concept of prior practice, right? And how that prevents piss poor performance. Planning ahead. And these kinds of resources are invaluable here. Now, a lot of us who have heard our Bug Out Bag 101 episode might be thinking, well, guys, does this directly apply to a bug out bag? Yeah, it does.
Gauze. And there's certainly, you don't want to have to use a chip bag for that chest, whatever.
You don't want to have to use a pen canister to pop an airway hole, right?
No. I mean, so I think, this absolutely applies to probably any kind of smart first aid kit that you're even taking with you on a camping trip or a significant hike. hike, right? Or some sort of outdoor adventure. People fall into ravines all the time, and if you don't have some of these things and you're off the beaten path, you could absolutely be in really, really bad shape and potentially be facing the worst possible outcome.
Yeah. And the thing is, all the cool gear and kit that you might have in a bug out bag is essentially going to be worthless if you don't know how to use it. Like, think of it this way. Let's say we're all of us together, right? We are magically people from the 1400s. And we have robbed, what's a store you would rob in the 1400s? The apothecary?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, all right.
Or perhaps the haberdashery.
All right, we've robbed the haberdasher apothecary.
Yes,
and,
what a good portmanteau. Yes,
we're selling where they're selling drugged headgear, and we've robbed this place, and we are trying to make a getaway, and we're running, and instead of a horse and a wagon, we see 1957 Cadillac. Awesome. Yeah. Great car, but we don't know how to drive a car because we're from the 1400s. So it's useless.
I don't know how to drive. I don't know what any of this shit does. And I'm really scared.
Not everyone knows how to do everything.
That's very true.
But that's a somewhat over elaborate scene painting there of exactly what you can run into if you have a really dope first aid kit or first responder ability, and you have all the toys and you have all the needed tools. If you don't know how to use them, then you're a person in the 1400s trying to drive a Cadillac.
Oh yeah. Who knows how to shift gears on one of those things? This is a phrase, or this old adage occurred to me, and it doesn't quite apply here, but I think it still works to mention. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. However, in a pinch, that pound of cure is going to be really, really, really necessary. And I did also want to mention that you can find a sort of abridged version of the T3C that is more of a quick reference guide. And honestly, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you probably want to have printed and laminated and have in your bug out bag, because phone batteries die. You don't want to just be stuck with having only a PDF version on your device. I think a hard copy of this would be really, really useful.
Yeah. Go a step further, right? Tape it to the passenger side dashboard of your car so that when people hop in, it's the first thing they see.
They know you're prepped and ready. Yeah.
Yes, they know what's up. And no, there's another point that Mr. Delay hits us up on that we responded to directly that is not TCCC, but is equally important.
Yeah, and it's one that I think you put forth in a previous episode. I can't remember. It was probably on the Bug Out Bag episode, but it's something that comes up often. One final note, Mr. DeLay says, you mentioned, Ben mentioned, in fact, that a map or compass are the best navigation tools since they don't need power or a connection. And to the previous point about a hard copy, things that don't require power or a connection out in the field, out in the wilderness, always going to be your best friend, because you know what happens when a phone dies, it becomes a really expensive brick. Which could maybe be useful in certain situations, but not in the ones that the device was intended for. I agree, but I cannot emphasize enough that land navigation is a skill, and a surprisingly perishable one at that. I remember soldiers, including myself, getting lost all the time. Anyone serious about depending on those tools should practice with them at least once a month, if not more. Y'all, what would be a good way to go about practicing with those tools that isn't putting you in peril or in harm's way? Maybe just taking them with you on a hike. You know, like I went on a nice bike ride on this really cool Silver Comet trail that goes all the way from Atlanta to Alabama. You do get into some woody areas, but it is, you know, populated, and there's plenty of foot traffic and people around. So something like that, you know, to see kind of which direction you're going, compare that to the direction of the sun, et cetera, things like that, maybe.
Yeah. I love Silver Comet, by the way. Yeah, I think that's a great way to to think through this. When we say perishable, just to step back for a moment, when we say perishable, we mean that you could find yourself lost in the woods, right? In a situation, you could have the map, but maybe it's dark, right? So you can't just look up into the sky and say, oh, the sun is here, therefore this is west or east, and therefore that is south or north. You may need to rely on a compass and a map, and depending on the level of accuracy you need, you might be surprised how much it is not like riding a bike.
Since I'm throwing out old timey adages, another one that comes to mind is practice not makes perfect, but makes permanent. Because without practicing something and repeating an action over and over again, it is never going to become a habit, despite how comfortable you feel with it, conceptually.
But the uncomfortable part of that is that if you practice something wrong, you will do it wrong.
Good
which
point,
is
Matt.
something my kids are learning in karate. Just about if you throw that side kick just a little wrong, but that's how you go home and do it. Whoops, your sidekick is not going to be right.
No,
right.
Totally. And huge thanks to Mr. DeLay. And I think we went a little bit short on this one. So I just wanted to ask you something, both of y'all, just on a personal level. You're talking about karate. So a close family member, not my actual kid, but my kid's sister, is getting bullied at school by someone who is into Taekwondo and is using their Taekwondo as bullying tactics. And I think the smart move would be to report this to their sensei, because that is the kind of thing that those teachers are so against, like on a fundamental level. And I think they would be the one to maybe cut them down to size a little bit and put them in their place, because mom and dad don't seem to be doing it. Just wondering what y'all thought.
It would work.
Yeah, you should do that immediately, because if you are using those skills to start a fight, then you are not listening to the message your sensei was teaching you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's my understanding that this is the kind of skill set that you attain so that you can defend yourself and defend others, who are being bullied or abused or attacked. So this is not, nobody is meant to get these skills so that they can just kick ass and take names. That's not the name of the game.
The kid could be attending the Cobra Kai.
Yeah, Cobra Kai reference.
All right. So my kid, sort of niece, I guess you could call her, maybe just needs to learn to do the crane.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're good.
Wax on, wax off indeed.
Oh, for sure. No question about it. Well, let's take a quick pause. Thanks again, Mr. D. Hear a word from our sponsor, and then we'll be back with some more messages from you.
And we've returned. Guys, we had something very interesting occur. We had a caller in early July 2nd. And this caller said some things, told a story. It was kind of one of those friend of a friend stories. We all know those, right? Where it's almost like a rumor or something when this person called in. And it's not that we didn't take it seriously. It's just, it's one of those unverifiable things. There's not a primary or even secondary source of information. It's a friend of a friend. So it's tough to even know what to believe when you're hearing a story like that. So we kind of let it slip by. And then this person called back after some developments. So we're going to listen first to the message that came to us on July 2nd of this year. And then we'll listen to the follow-up after that. So here we go. Here's the first message from July 2nd.
Hi, y'all. I got off the phone with a friend that I really trust, and she was telling me how she has a friend who she's really concerned about because he's been drinking really heavily recently, and he is a data intelligence analysis, something like that, for the Navy, which means that he has clearance. And she told me that he let it slip that he got deployed to DC. And that's when his drinking started to up. And he's reserved too. So he's not active. He's reserved and got deployed. And she says that he can't really talk about it, but some of the things that he says, it just kind of sounds like he's worried about what he has to do against the American people. I have no clue. I could completely be fear-mongering right now, and this is just hearsay, but I find it very interesting that minimum a Navy reservist was activated and sent to DC. Yeah, so weird. Thank y'all so much. I hope you have a good night.
Okay. So this anonymous person, heard from a friend this really troubling sounding development situation and decided to call us and leave that message. On your, if you knew nothing about the news right now, what would you guys think about that?
I think I'm a little confused. This is about someone being like under trauma because of their deployment and triggering a drinking problem.
It's someone who is Navy Reserve who works in data intelligence, deployed to Washington, D.C., and was drinking heavily and talking to his friends about how he's worried he's going to have to do things he doesn't want to do. At least that's the gist of the message that I got.
I get it. Yeah. Okay. So a little bit of, maybe some stress involved in the heavy drinking as well. Do some things that he doesn't want to do. What do you think that might mean?
Well, specifically, at least in the message, caller says to the American people, like against the American people, gathering intelligence for some future action. Again, this is July 2nd of this year. Let's go to the follow-up, I guess, and we will hear what the person has to say.
I had to call y'all as soon as I saw how the National Guard has been deployed into DC about a month ago. I don't know if y'all remember, but I called y'all to let you know how my friend in the National Guard had told me how he had been brought up to DC to gather intel, and he had been drinking really bad because he had told me he was turning against the American people. It's happening. What's happening in DC is just the start. His drinking is getting worse, and what he's slipping is getting worse. There's a reason why. This is just the first wave, and he's been up there 4 months gathering intel. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I do hope y'all do a story about this. The National Guard has been in D.C. collecting intel for a hot minute now on where they're deploying. D.C. is the start. Sorry, I got real intense. I hope y'all have a fabulous night.
Yeah, I think I've been burying my head in the sand a little bit about the potential future versions of what's going on in D.C.
Well, it's certainly troubling, I think, from an objective standpoint, right? It's either troubling because there's a massive crime wave occurring in cities across the country that needs to be assisted by, National Guardsmen, or there's seems to be a movement here to rationalize and normalize, troops with weapons on streets in American cities to self-police in some kind of weird way. We've talked about a little bit on the show already. It is really weird, I think, just to hear one person's perspective, as it's happening before and then as it's occurring now, and then potentially having information from someone who's not dealing with it so well, right? Who's being told to do this. Or this is, we have to be objective as well with the whole thing, right? As much as we can, just from what this caller is even saying.
Those crime stats certainly don't seem to bear out, though, from everything that I'm seeing. I don't know if y'all are seeing differently, but it's my understanding that the crime rates in D.C. are at a historic low, and it's being used as a rationalization to do this deployment, and that I could see that being a tactic used elsewhere.
Yes, we can jump to Al Jazeera if we want to, just to get a little bit of data on this. This occurred on August 12th. The president announced that the federal government would take control of the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department to address surging crime. We've got a quote here. This is from the president. "I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act and placing the D.C. Metropolitan and Police Department under direct federal control." It was also announced at the time that he would be deploying National Guard. And if we jump to August 19th, we've got a list here from the Hill of the different states that are sending National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. Louisiana is sending 135 members of the Louisiana National Guard. Mississippi, 200 soldiers from the Mississippi National Guard. Tennessee, 160 personnel. West Virginia is sending 300 to 400, quote, skilled personnel. South Carolina is sending 200 National Guardsmen. And Ohio, 150 military police from the National Guard. I think maybe the most troubling thing is that when you look at a lot of the reporting from various sources, including Fox News and other places like that tend to lean towards maybe the president and the administration, everybody is pointing out that it's an objective fact that crime rates in specifically Washington, D.C. are low. There was a spike several years ago in crime, and that is kind of how crime statistics work, right? Crime statistics can be a very political thing. You can...
There's a delay in reporting, too, always.
There is,
right.
And you can goose numbers pretty well, depending on what you want to have happen, who's in charge, who's the mayor, does the mayor align with whatever, the governor, or things like that.
Just like unemployment numbers.
Oh, yeah. All of these numbers and statistics that get thrown around that people get enraged about or scared about and all that stuff, it's stuff that can be used to make you feel a certain way so that hopefully you will either vote or support or be against something, right? We just got to keep that in mind as we see all this stuff. The action itself, though, to declare an emergency and then have that kind of presence, I think, is maybe the weirdest thing. Just getting people used to seeing soldiers from your country on streets in the city where you live, with some of them armed, some of them not armed, but making arrests alongside, police officers, local police officers, and the FBI, all kind of working together as this big thing.
But apparently there's also a real weird hierarchical disconnect between those agencies in these kinds of situations, or specifically now where it's like kind of unclear who's in charge, and a lot of things get lost in the shuffle of the chaos of an act like this.
Yes. And we've seen out of the BBC, a lot of other reporting that the mayor there in Washington, D.C., Mayor Muriel Bowser, who happens to be on the other side of the aisle than the presidential administration, pushing back and saying, hey, we can't do this. It's not going exactly the way the initial announcement said it was going to go, with, specifics of how the police departments, who they report to and everything, but it is convoluted now at this point and a bit strange, and you got to do some digging to actually see where is the chain of command and how does then the FBI figure into that, and where does the National Guard figure into that. It's a bit strange.
Is this also like a logical or a spiritual successor to what happened in Los Angeles? Like, in terms of deploying the Guard without the permission of the mayor, without any kind
deploying
of
the Marines?
That's what I meant. Yeah, excuse me. But just like in Los Angeles during that whatever period of unrest, I guess, as it was described, there was a lot of to-do made about, how it was kind of an overarching act that didn't really have precedent.
To interject here, there is an interesting parallel and a series of breadcrumbs we can lay, because if I recall correctly, the last time... So the issue with the Marines is that they were deployed despite the protestations of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. In the D.C. case, there is a more recent precedent, right? Because the National Guard was last deployed a few years ago on a sunny day in January. Yeah. January 6th, 2021 was the last time the NG got gathered up and posse together in D.C. And anonymous caller, thank you so much for following up. Sorry, I've been a little bit quiet in this part of our listener mail program. It's because there is a lot to think about, and I'd like for us to do an episode on this as a follow-up to our episode years back on the militarization of police forces. One thing that I think is key to understand, to get past the headlines here, folks, for you, anonymous caller, and for all of us listening, whether you are civilian, veteran currently serving, you have to remember that if you know somebody in the Guard, if you know someone in the Marines, if you know someone in the military, the last thing those folks want to do is be forced to turn on citizens of the United States. The police are supposed to be doing that job. Not saying they're turning on, but the police are supposed to interact with civilians in a law-keeping fashion. Military against the civilians historically leads to bad things across governments, whatever stripe of government we're talking about, not just democracy. So when we hear news, regardless of where it's coming from, let's be very careful not to think of these people serving as some monolithic entity. People in the National Guard I feel safe saying this, the vast majority don't wake up every day saying, ooh, I hope I can bruise some heads somewhere. I can't wait for the POTUS to send me to kick around homeless people. That is not the case, right?
Yeah. But it's really tough because it's happening at the same time that there are masked Homeland Security folks and ICE folks in the same streets doing raids where they are, there have been so many reports of the violence that's occurring with those guys. And I think it's hard for maybe someone who is a civilian who isn't exposed to a lot of this stuff and doesn't have that perspective, just watching all of it occur and then trying to discern like, well, who's who and is anybody actually on the team of people that's there to serve and protect? Or like what is happening and what is this? And I don't know, it's just a lot of fear, I think, that ends up getting generated through that.
Yeah, agreed. And the point I wanted to end on there is the idea of constitutional crisis, normalizing the presence of armed forces against civilians, similar to our conversation about the militarization of police. That occurs in step with normalizing the erosion of the Constitution. Democracy is an active experiment, right? We're cooking live, which means it is fragile. And without being alarmist, dear anonymous caller, this does feel to me like an episode. And unfortunately, it feels like a timely episode. There's so much more I want to say. I got to be careful on this one, guys, but I think stay tuned and stay safe.
There's a great piece in CNN that talks about the 1968 riots after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. That's when riots in the streets were happening in Washington, D.C., and there were a ton of fires. It was chaos. And that is when the National Guard was deployed there, perhaps most notably when there was an actual emergency situation where the National Guard had to, in large part, attempt to control civilians that were pissed off and really angry and scared. And it makes me nervous that something could happen where enough people would be angry that they would want to protest or go into the streets for one reason or another sometime in the near future, and then there would be this force. They would be met with this force. Again, masked up and ready to rock against civilians.
It seems like a lot of testing of the waters, too. Like how, can we justify some of these acts by throwing out these somewhat misused statistics and get certain people towing the party line publicly. There's been a lot of talk on Capitol Hill from folks talking about, there's one particular lawmaker, I can't remember the name, but talking about how he drives around D.C. with his seatbelt on because he's afraid of a carjacking and he doesn't want to, be compromised. He said, I don't care what you think about me, but that's scary here. And, and I was listening to a conversation, I think it was on the Majority Report, where the guest was talking, who was like a Capitol Hill kind of commentator, who lives there, said there certainly was a spike in carjackings in past years, and there have been spikes in crime, but the way it's being reported now feels much more hyperbolic than it does feel like the reality on the streets that's happening today. And it seems more like cherry picking in order to justify an act. And that kind of thing can happen anywhere.
Yeah. It's crazy stuff, you guys. Thank you so much, anonymous person, for just sending us those messages. If you are out there and you hear something and you want to tell us about it, we would love to hear. Yeah. Thanks again. And let's all be safe. We'll be right back with more messages from you.
And we have returned. We're going to do a quick double back. Dylan, I defer to you, Tennessee, to give us whatever a double back sound cue sounds like. Perfect. That's a real trust fall when we do it in the edit, folks. Why are we doubling back? We're doubling back to our conversation with Mr. Delay, just because it bears repeating the concept. Noel, as you'll recall, Matt, as you'll recall, the concept of perishable land navigation skills. The Void does write back. We reached out to Mr. Delay. And when we reach out on the email, we can all see this conversation. Wanted to take a moment to be an accountability buddy with you, Mr. Delay, because we wholeheartedly agree with your point about this perishability, and this prompted another conversation that we've been having on and off again in Strange News and Listener Mail in episodes about automation and technology and the cybernetic future of the human mind. It's crazy because the normalization of cell and GPS technology has put most folks from developed countries in a very tight spot. One of my favorite examples that we use for this when we were talking about AI was the advent of accessible electronic calculators, right? That resulted in this decline in intermediate math skills. Like, when's the last time you guys had to do some hand-drawn long division?
It's funny you say that. I just had to order a TI-83 for my kid, and it was fun to see the way they're packaging them these days. They're a little skinnier, a little sleeker looking, but it's the same old TI-83. I wonder if you can still put Snake on it or Drug Wars.
We should do a history of Texas Instruments. Gosh, what a monopoly they have in the U.S.
Silicon Prairie. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Did you make that up?
No, that's what they call it.
Oh, that's amazing.
There's a part of Texas. Yeah, I wish. There's a part of Texas that's where Texas Instruments was based that was referred to as the Silicon Prairie.
Matt, have you, when's the last time you've done some, I like saying hand-drawn long division because it sounds old-timey.
Yeah. Well, when you've got a kid going through like fourth grade, heading in, or one in fifth grade, there's some long division that you got to do to help the kids with their stuff. So you got to remember. And it is not fun.
I just prefer to use my trusty abacus.
It's not like riding a bike. This is interesting because fellow conspiracy realists who may be of a certain professional acumen or a certain age, you are probably astonished by how quickly generations after you became reliant on smartphones, right? On Texas Instruments, on cell phones, on smartphone mapping. And this is the accountability part. Mr. Delay, as you know, shared a story about 2 years back outside of the United States where your faithful correspondent did have to use a physical map in the dead of night and had that stomach churning. Oh God, what was that movie where the little kid says the F word? Oh, Christmas Story.
Fudge?
Yeah, I had a Christmas Story moment. Oh, fudge. But I didn't say fudge because I realized I wasn't sure exactly where I was, which is pretty key information if you want to read a map effectively. I also didn't have topographical information. And as we all know, strolling on relatively flat terrain is way easier and way cooler than accidentally going up and down a mountain, a cliff, a ravine. So I just, I'm sharing that just to emphasize the point that practice, how'd you say it?
Practice makes permanent.
Practice makes permanent. Love it. So with that, we're going to move through some emails pretty quickly here for time, and we'll see if we have if we've got our jimmies about us and want to do some letters from home at the end. We have already had fantastic, phenomenal, and disturbing responses to Chapter 1 of our Jeffrey Epstein update. Chapter 2 will have published by the time you're hearing this listener mail program. So one thing that we noticed, we're hearing from folks like Samuel or Solar Borden or Steel Wolf, we're seeing a pattern of people responding to our exploration of the controversial videotape, or the tape footage released by the DOJ, U.S. government et al. It's a tape not of Jeffrey Epstein's cell, but outside of the cell. Analysts working with Wired and the Wall Street Journal and a bevy of other folks have proven that the tape is not what it was sold as to the American people. And with this, I think we should go to just one letter that shows us the vein of thinking here and why there may be more to the story of the tape. This is Steel Wolf. Steel Wolf, you say, "Hello, guys. I've listened to you all for close to a decade. I am ex-military, and I have worked at the White House for 2 presidents. I have a long list, but these are relevant. I also worked for a 3-letter agency in Korea and Maryland." And obviously, Steel Wolf, you mean CNN. That's the 3-letter agency to whom you refer. You say, "I have always thought of writing, but this one made me reach out. An old friend and I have discussed this from the first term in office, and we expected him," meaning the current president, "to have smarter people working for him, and we were relieved that he had not collaborated better. There is speculation between us that he," again the current president, "has corrected that failing in numerous regards. If old school individuals were involved, they would have released the Epstein video the way it was, knowingly and intentionally." Let's pause there. Let's think about it, because the idea that we could so easily find discrepancies in the story makes it a headline, right? It gives people a mystery to unpack. It's sort of like the old anecdote of a teenager who doesn't want their parents to know they're smoking weed, so they leave a cigarette butt around to be discovered. The parent feels like they're finding a secret, right? But they're not finding the real thing. So bizarre. Maybe we'll go a little bit further and then let's open it up here. Steel Wolf, you say, "This has people focused on discussing the video as it is the only thing they have to discuss. It plays into the way true news is reported. You all pointed out all the other items, like from the camera to the guard shift changes, but that's speculation, and discussion will be limited and not what most people will remember. There are people still researching this, and they may not find all the actual proof. However, if 3 to 6 months later the whole video is released showing nothing or just the one person leaving, the majority of people will just accept. As you all know, this is not the first, and regardless of how this event plays out, it will not be the last." Now, let's stop there, you guys. What do you think of this theory or this line of thought that there may be more to the story of how the video was released?
Feels undoubtedly the case that there's something up. This breadcrumbing technique, it just seems like classic subterfuge, classic distraction. Give them just enough to shut them up.
Well, yeah, and the way it was done, if you released this video in this fashion that's clearly stitched together, it gives you an opportunity, as Steel Wolf is saying, to release the actual unedited one. But that actual unedited one could be a completely recreated video. Could be, you could do so much in the amount of time that this video has been in the news and through the cycle and everything. It could be used as a smokescreen for whatever actual activities are being done right now. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. It certainly caught my attention really well. So I feel like a sucker a bit.
When do you think we're going to have the first confirmed use of deep fakes by the government uncovered? Do you think that's going to happen?
Stalin era, that guy was a legend in the early days of Photoshop.
Manual Photoshop, but I just mean in this era. Like, do you think we're going to have some sort of scandal involving faked information released by the government to cover something up?
100%. Yeah, it'll be in retrospect.
Grainy security footage would certainly be a good starting point.
Good candidate.
Because you wouldn't be able to prove exactly that it's that person, but you could say, well, that is the person. There's Epstein walking right there. He's fine.
Yeah, and if the camera is far enough away, you could just color it a few pixels. You know what I mean? Bigfoot style. That's who got into the cell. Look, I don't think anybody is being a sucker by looking at this video stuff, right? Like looking at the metadata as we discussed, as the analyst and the journalist explored. These are questions that need to be asked. And what I think Steele, Wolf, and several of our other fellow listeners are asking about now is a sort of meta-narrative question, right? Like we were saying, you guys saw, we responded to Steele Wolf directly via email. How'd you put it, Matt? We put it the same way too. The idea that you could buy time from the news cycle, right? You can be the kid who is hiding the fact that you're smoking weed by being quote unquote discovered leaving a cigarette butt around. You gave people a contained mystery to solve. We don't know if that's true. Personally, guys, I suspect it is not implausible, right? Especially if we're talking about this new era of skullduggery and shenanigans. It's not that hard to fake stuff, right? And we use the term deep fake, but I think in this case, deep fake makes it sound more difficult than it is. You can just regular fake the news at this point.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, and not to mention that, like, just this culture of deep fake and of AI and all this stuff has just created a palpable sense of distrust in anything that people see. So it's easier than ever to say, don't trust what you see.
Well, okay. So let's stay on that pathway because this is really interesting. So today, on Tuesday, August 19th, when we're recording this, the Justice Department is beginning to, like today, send records to the House Oversight Committee. And I wonder if that thing, the compartmentalization of the House Oversight Committee, right, from the Department of Justice getting those files, do you think that's another way to kind of seem as though something's happening, seem as though they're just transparency, but ultimately it all goes to the House Oversight Committee and then they will choose what is disseminated or not?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between performative progress, the appearance of progress, and actually moving forward on things like this. You can always buy more time in the relentless news cycle. So, one of the difficult things about what philosophers and pundits sometimes call post-truth politics, one of the most difficult things
Which is such a 1984 term.
Yeah.
Is it not? Just, yeah.
One of the most difficult things is the idea of figuring out, parsing out, sussing out what to focus on, right? We were talking with the excellent Dana Schwartz and Lizzie Logan about their newest podcast, Hoax. And in that conversation, we came across a really interesting idea. Is it easier or more difficult to perpetrate a hoax, to mislead the public now than it was in, say, we'll go back to it, in the 1400s, right? In the 1400s, instead of the New York Times, you had the town crier, and you kind of had to hope that guy was on the up and up. Is it, I'm really interested in your thoughts here, guys. Is it easier to pull the wool over the public eye now than it was in the Middle Ages, or is it more difficult?
I'm going to say it was really easy then, because just of how information gets out there and is shared, right?
Draw a convincing picture of a person, and all of a sudden they're a criminal, right? Like slap them on a wanted poster. You know what I mean? Like
all you needed was a little power or authority, and just say something happened, and it happened. You know,
or just
I don't know.
A little bit of Riz. You know, like I used to rock up to Bavaria and just say, "Yeah, I'm Baron von Herringbone." Which is a name I made up, but nobody else could travel to Czechoslovakia.
Baron von Herringbone from Bavaria?
Yeah, from earlier.
That's a real tongue twister. It's a lot of fun. I think when we asked that question on that episode of Ridiculous History with Dana and her co-host made when we were having that conversation on Ridiculous History, was that it's sort of like yes and no. It's easier now. Mm-hmm. But it's yes and no for so many things. Like, on the one hand, we have access to the entirety of the wealth of human civilization's knowledge and lessons learned and historical precedent and everything. But on the other hand, it's also clouded and convoluted with bullcrap and misdirection and all of these distractions that it's almost like we might as well not have the information. Depending on who you are and how easily distracted or, misled you might be. And it's not saying people are stupider now or were stupid back then even. It's just different. And I think we're just living in this culture of deceit and disbelief, and that can be weaponized by bad actors.
It's an interesting concept to think about the reaction to something that occurs, right? The wool being pulled over our eyes, and then you find out, right? How do you guys think it's harder to get a physical, actual reaction from people now to something that occurs like that, or than it would be then? And you get the pitchforks and everything. I feel like maybe that is much harder to do now.
Talking about desensitization, right? Mm-hmm. Of encountering topical stories in a post-truth politics environment, right? So much anxiety of what can be accepted as a fact. The world is ending somewhere for someone every day. It's always Halloween in America. I am emotionally exhausted from the existential crisis of Tuesday. And now I have to learn about some new horrible stuff on Wednesday. Please just show me some videos of that guy in Thailand who rescues street dogs. Let me put my head in the sand and check out for just a moment. That is very much real.
Well, it is. And we're also we're uniquely in a place where we could verify and cross-reference and fact-check most things, but people just don't. They just believe the headline if it's inflammatory enough or if it supports their particular worldview enough. So I think that's what I was getting at, where it's this yes and no. We have access to everything we need to be smarter, but we just choose not to do it, to use it, because we're so kind of easily spellbound by this kind of throwaway culture of little nuggets of information and headlines and stuff.
And to add on to that, everybody listening, there is a meta grift afoot. And I don't know if it's a conspiracy. I just think it's unfair to everyone who is tuning in, everyone who is trying to live their life evening to evening. The burden of the truth is now on the consumer, right? Just like so many other things in the United States and in modern human civilization. Right. The clever conspiracy of recycling, for instance, was that it put the burden of the environmental damage of plastic onto the consumer instead of on the companies. So they're in a similar way, not to sound too academia about it, but in a similar way, the burden of proving the truth has been placed on the civilian, right? On the audience, on the person who already probably has a job, right? So people are not holding the media accountable. People are very much not holding the government accountable to things that are supposed to be a source of discourse and truth. And this is not to denigrate all the very hardworking politicians, especially at a local level, in your neck of the global woods. This is not to denigrate the journalists who are increasingly out there risking their lives to speak truth to power, but this is saying that I think it's a grift. I think the post-truth society is quite unfair to the average human being.
Dude, there's a really interesting story in the news right now that meets up in all of those places, Ben, with I don't know the full story, but the Democrats and Republicans fighting in Texas about redistricting.
Yeah. And having to get the hall pass.
Yeah. There's the story about Nicole Collier, who's a representative there in one of the areas, and she refused to sign a piece of paper where the state troopers were going to monitor every one of the lawmakers, like as they left, and
escort,
then escort, but an escort 24 hours, right? So she refused to sign a paper that said that. So now I guess she stayed the night in the courthouse or something, or where it is they do their business, and she's not going to be able to leave, I guess, because she's refusing this kind of police presence, which is just an interesting place where it's government and the police in one thing. I don't know.
Right. And then tomorrow there will be another disaster. The world is ending somewhere every day. It is always Halloween in America. This sounds vague, but it makes more and more sense the more you think about it. I'd love to hang out with our buddy George. Unfortunately, he has passed. It would have been cool to hear what he thought about this. So in lieu of talking with George, maybe we end here on a quote from him. In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it. It was inevitable that they should make that claim sooner or later. The logic of their position demanded it, not merely the validity of experience, but the very existence of external reality was tacitly denied by their philosophy.
Whoa. I really thought you were talking about George W.
Yeah.
We should do it in that accent. In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5.
You're talking about Soros? Which George are you talking about?
We're talking about Orwell, man.
Oh, of course. Some might argue that Soros is a bit of an Orwellian figure as well. Orwellian. No, you're totally right.
Orwellian. Keep it. You're totally right, Noel. One of us has to take one for the team and figure out a good George Soros accent. Yeah,
what does he even sound like? I've never heard the man speak. Does he even exist?
Billionaire Grecian dude.
I found him at the World Economic Forum. I'm going to see what he sounds like.
Classic George Soros. So while we are researching our George Soros accent for Dylan to do in the future, we're just going to volunteer you for that one, bud. We do want to tell you that in these divisive times where it's very difficult to separate fact from fiction, to separate falsehoods from the truth, we do have one thing that is very true that we can tell you. We are going to do an episode about the Bermuda Triangle live from the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, they gave us permission and everything. Stoked.
We're going to do it with the ocean, the vast ocean beneath our feet.
The ocean's so deep.
Oh, man.
Oh, and there's stuff down there.
We're going to go deep on the deep. Hopefully, oh, man. I'm a little freaked out, guys. I know it's going to be the folks at Virgin Cruises. They're going to take good care of us. Isn't it funny that they call all their cruise passengers sailors? That was new to me. I thought that was fun. Mm-hmm. But I am a little nervous. I've never been on a cruise before. Never even been on a vessel of this size, just like a pontoon boat or a ferry. That's about my experience. So.
Yeah, we'll confront your thalassophobia. Which is the fancy word for fear of deep bodies of water or open ocean.
I have mentioned that.
Very real.
Yeah, no, I fear the unseen, large creatures lurking just beneath the surface in the depths.
Did you guys see that for the first time a colossal squid was caught on camera by some deep sea researchers in a submersible?
More like deep fake researchers. No, I know it was real. But some of those things you look at and you're like, nah, fake, but it's not always.
But it was just a little baby.
Aww. Right. It was still transparent. I hope it grows. The ocean is a tough neighborhood now. We need to do another episode about maritime collapse. But when we do this stuff on the high seas, we are going to be part of a true crime cruise with our pals at Virgin, October 10th through the 15th. We would love for you all to join us. And thanks to everybody who already reached out and asked if we're actually going to be on the boat. As a rule, we don't like to tell people where we're at or when we're going to be at a place. That's just operational security. But for this, we're making an exception. Please join us.
Yeah, we're apparently going to be hosting things. So we'll be like doing meet and greets and hanging out, doing trivia. And we're just going to be, well, we're all in it together, you know, there in the midst of the Bermuda Triangle.
There may even be an excursion.
I've heard tale of an excursion.
Take a deep dive, scuba-wise. More to come on that, and hopefully more to come from you, friends and neighbors, fellow conspiracy realists. Thank you for joining us this evening. We've got more stuff that is going to lead to episodes in the future, and we would love for you to join up on our strange enterprise, our continuing mission to boldly go into weirder and weirder territory. So give us a call, send us an email, The Void writes back, and find us on the lines.
Indeed. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. Get in on the conversation with your fellow conspiracy realists. Also, we exist at that handle on X, FKA Twitter, and on YouTube with video content for your deep diving pleasure. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show, and there's more.
Oh, yes, there's so more. Guys, here's George Soros.
That there is one person who was very deeply involved in Ukraine.
Okay, there you go.
You got Sith Lord
I could
vibes.
do
I'm
it.
not going to lie. Little Sith
No,
Lord.
I could do it. No, that's just
I
the
think you got
billionaire
this.
accent. Yeah.
I think that's true. Yeah. And he didn't realize how ancient he was.
Well, there you
I mean,
go.
it's Kissinger with a lisp, you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, we have an assignment. Call in. Our number is 1-833-STDWYTK. It's a voicemail. Give us your best George Soros or just impersonation. Let's do that. I don't think we ever called for impersonations, guys.
Oh, my God. That'd be a fun little grab bag. Please. Send them along.
It'd be fun to try and figure out who you're doing when you leave your message. That'd be really fun. But yes, call that number, 1-833-STDWYTK. You got 3 minutes. Give yourself a cool nickname and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you want to send us text and images and links and all the good stuff, why not instead send us an email? We are
The entities that read each piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid, sometimes the void writes back. If you want to know more about some of the stuff we alluded to in tonight's listener mail program, and if you'd like to just get a random out-of-context fact, we would love to share one with you. So join us out here in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.